Welcome everyone to A Million Mums for a very special interview today with a lady called Colleen Doolley. Colleen has been on her spiritual journey for over 25 years and working in her practice for almost 15 years. Colleen teaches and practices a unique form of energetic spiritual hypnotherapy that she created called Heart Energetics. She also practices and teaches past life regression therapy and life between lives spiritual regression. Colleen's passion is empowering people to be free of whatever holds them back so that they can step more into what they truly are. I'm delighted to be able to talk to Colleen today about a range of issues that are concerning all of us as we are coping with the changes that are developing in the world as we see it right now. Colleen, welcome to the show.
You said in my intro, I've been on my spiritual path for quite a long time, 25 years, but to wake up to the truth of the world is a very different kettle of fish. So when you're spiritual, you're connected to a part of yourself that's not, available. Typically, it's been snuffed out in our society. We've gone down the path of science and completely disconnected from spirituality unless you're somebody who goes to church or has a faith of some sort. The majority of Australians in particular are very disconnected from that. So I see spirituality and awake is very different. And I didn't realize that until it happened to me. So it was probably 4 or 5 years ago, my ex-partner had been on his journey of discovering truth for probably 15 years before that, 15 or 20 years. And I had been exposed to people telling me things before, and I guess I just wasn't ready. I didn't want to know about it. It was too heavy. It was too much. And I kind of just pretty much ignored it, really. Kept my head under the sand when it came to that sort of stuff. But being with him, I guess I was more open and ready to hear. And then I went down those rabbit holes myself and found out truth that blew my mind. To discover that everything you have been taught and told from day dot is a lie is pretty hard to digest. But I guess I'm somebody who's a real truth seeker, and my work is all about truth. My own experience is about truth. And so this was just not only difficult, but incredible and fascinating at the same time. So I started finding myself getting quite obsessed with, searching behind, what we're told typically in the way of mainstream media, medicine, history. And, it's been my obsession since then. But I guess the whole COVID thing kicked it off to another degree. And I think that's when a lot of people also found the uncomfortable feeling inside of them that something wasn't quite right. And they started to question. And that's really when you start going down those rabbit holes for yourself. So that's really what happened for me. And I can't let it go, really.
Thanks, Colleen. We all come from separate pathways, don't we, to arrive at this spiritual realm where we go on a journey of discovery that for many of us is a new lifetime of discovery. For me, it was discovering in my 20s that the rat race truly was a rat race, and you don't mind getting on because it tests to see how resilient you are and how much you can get into regular society, and you judge yourself by your successes, and you work hard because that's the culture that you are told to believe in, that the harder you work, the luckier you get, and consequently you start to accumulate new wealth, new income, new possessions, and onto that rat race you begin, and it becomes kind of competitive. Many of us in our 20s thought that once we'd got into this rat race and were working harder than we ever had before and trying to make pathways into the new world, we started to talk about things like retiring at 40, which you do when you're 28 or 30 years of age, only to discover that when you get to 40 that you're nowhere near resourced enough to actually do that. So a few of our friends might become successful and earn great money and take great trips, buy nice houses and cars and all of that stuff. But for the rest of us, we just get caught up in it. I guess we become addicted to that way of life, not dissimilar to the song Cats in the Cradle. for those of us who are familiar with that, and realize that that's where we're going. Colleen, where do we go next? And is this something that's familiar even with a spiritual teacher such as yourself?
Absolutely was. I was, believe it or not, working in investment banking at the time when I started studying hypnotherapy. And unlike most people, I'd already started my spiritual journey before going into that harsh world. And I was a young female without banking experience. And I could energetically feel the attack from these older men who didn't believe I belonged there. And it was such a cold, heartless world. And I really did struggle being there. And it was only a stepping stone for me at the time. But I really recognized more than ever what that world was like. You know, it was long hours. There was a lot of stress. So people tended to drink a lot, both at lunchtime, afterwards. And it was just, and so did I. I got caught into that too as a stress release. But it was just a very harsh environment. And I then, fortunately, well, that company went under, owing us money, and I ended up getting a job offer in the industry I prior to that, which was the facility industry. And I was offered a job in Byron Bay, which I absolutely loved, and that was an executive management position up there, which I jumped at the opportunity to do because I wanted to live in Byron. And I was working that job for probably 3 years. At the same time, I was, studying intuition and all that kind of stuff, and kept getting these strong messages from both myself and anybody else who read me that I was supposed to be teaching and healing. And when you've got a big mortgage, you can't see a way out of that. I thought, yeah, that's great, but I can't leave my well-paid job in order to fulfill this nudge I'm getting. And it ended up being a big health crisis that I had that woke me up. And I listened, and I thought, I can't keep doing this to myself. It's enough, and it's a message for me to move away from this. And so I took a leap of faith and quit that job and started my business. And I cannot say anything apart from it was the best thing I ever did. And it was the scariest thing I did. I remember being terrified about how money was going to come. But beautifully, I was supported by the universe. I happened to have, a financial support in the form of my loan set up for the initial time of setting up my business. And I was suddenly able to feel who I truly am, not this held, stressed person that was just doing whatever I had to do in the crisis of a really full-on, intense work environment. And suddenly, doors open that I didn't expect, because I was in flow. I was following that inner nudge, and it ended up being quite a big, beyond a nudge. It was a big, knockdown for me to finally listen. And I say to people, please don't wait for it to get to that point. And I guess, this time, and even the last round of COVID lockdowns for people last year, was a real wake-up call to what's important. Being out of that environment of busy go and distraction, to be forced to sort of just slow right down. People are eating at home, and they're connecting with family, they're working in a garden, they're taking walks and exercising, where they probably weren't doing a lot of that before. And I think it's shifting people's priorities and coming back to what is important. So yes, I have had that experience, and I would never go back there again.
It appears that all of us do get that midlife wake-up call, and many of us have gone down this spiritual pathway. It's the idea that we realize that there's got to be more to life than just what we see in front of us. You don't necessarily know that until something in your life triggers you. It could be your work, it could be a condition, it could be an illness, it could be a loss. But it's not up to us in this video today to convince you to go onto a spiritual pathway, but rather provide you with a story that you can look at and compare notes to when it is that you do arrive on this spiritual pathway. Colleen, how was it that you can see now very differently? And what is it that you actually are seeing today in the world?
So I feel this time is multifaceted. I feel that there's lots of levels of why this is happening and what exactly is happening. I feel that we've been controlled for so long, unknowingly. We just think that that's what you do as a human. You get up and you work and you go to work, you come home and you repeat it and do it again. We have a weekend off. But really, we're born to be free and to contribute to society for sure, but not to be driven by, paying taxes and trying to get ahead and, the cost of living and all that kind of stuff. I truly believe that we've been enslaved against our will and against our knowing. So this time is about rising up above that, beyond that, beyond the dark cabal that's been, controlling the world, the 1% elite who believe they own the world and control us. So this is forcing us to recognize who we really are. And I think that this time, very, very importantly, it's a spiritual war, and we're forced to make a choice. And for me, I trust nothing more than my inner knowing, and I'm guided by that. I will not be told what I can and cannot do with my body, and I am very, very clear on that. A lot of people are not so clear on that, and a lot of people are coerced into making decisions they don't want to. Ultimately, it's a spiritual war. I believe that this whole COVID thing was supposed to go even more so in a dark direction, and I feel that we're going to pull it back before it gets there, but it has to get worse before people really recognize what's going on and stand up and say no more. It has to be something that we look back on in history and go, remember that time? Wow, we'll never let that happen again. Because we've slowly lost our freedoms. We've slowly sort of accepted and trusted a government that is doing the wrong thing by us, in my opinion. By these lockdowns, I feel that we're all very disgruntled by that, but people are knowing that this is not right, and we know that nothing is making sense when it comes to these supposed rules. Some people see they're laws. They're not laws. They're mandates and they're regulations, and they're this, that, and the other thing. We're not lawfully required to do these things. So I think that there's the darkness that is happening in the control aspect of this. It's not about health, it's about control. I'm sure people would feel a resonance around that. And I also feel that there's a really positive experience in the background of that. I feel that the guys that I refer to as the white hats, the good guys that are sick of this as well, in positions of power, are going to be overcoming this sort of stuff from a high level as well. And I think they're utilising COVID as a facade whilst we're safely locked away to be doing some stuff in the background to drain this swamp of these evil tyrants who have been controlling the world for so long. So, yeah. I think that's happening at a level. But there's a spiritual law and there's a human experience here that we're very aware of. And I think both those things have a very positive outcome at the end. The spiritual war is the same. There's light versus dark, and that we will overcome this at a very high level and transcend into the 5D realm. So we needed this kind of push to recognize who we truly are.
We are at this ascension moment right now where we keep talking about this 5D world. Now, we are currently living in a 3D world. So for those who are watching that don't know what we are talking about, Colleen, could you please explain what a 3D and a 5D world is and what it actually means?
Sure. So the 3D realm, firstly, that we've been living in is quite a dense duality of right, wrong, good, bad, and it's a hard experience for a spiritual being to experience being in, but it's also a great learning opportunity. So my work is all about regressing people back to that place in between incarnations where we reconnect to ourselves at a soul level, and we remember who we truly are there, and that we've chosen experiences such as this experience of being in physical form on Earth, feeling emotion and density and all that kind of stuff. But what comes with emotion and density and all that kind of stuff is the difficulty and the duality. And that's what we have, this right, wrong, good, bad, light, dark extremes, really. Whereas the 5D is where we're shifting into higher levels of ourselves and a higher frequency where we don't need to have that experience anymore. It's a beautiful, sure, it's not, problems of the world don't fall away completely. We still are learning and growing, but nothing like this intensity that is happening here. And that, whenever something difficult happens, it pushes something else, So whenever I look back at my most painful life experiences, they've given me the most reward and growth. And that's how I look at anything happening now. 2 years ago, I had a very, very difficult time in my life, where even whilst I was in it, I knew that I was going to come through the other side with such growth and the beauty that happens when you go through those tough times. It's like a diamond, it's the rubbing and the difficult time that diamond has to come through, from the sand being, bashed around, and the beauty that comes through is that sparkling diamond. And we're the same. We need to be pushed and poked and go, to the bottom in order to come rising up to the top. And then we know the experience of that too. So I think that it's very much the 3D world is about that. It's about the difficulty of extremes and the polarity of life. And now, because we're vibrationally shifting, we're ready to step. And I think 4D is just the stepping stone between. And most people are probably sitting in that space. Some people won't, and that's okay. From a soul perspective, we all have an experience here. We've all got a purpose here, and some people are on purpose to stay here and stay in heaviness and stay in whatever they are experiencing, because we interact with that and we have a choice and an experience of our own with that. So some will stay, some will move naturally, some will leave the planet. In fact, I feel a lot of people will leave the planet, and we can talk about that as well. But the rest of us will just, because of the frequencies coming in and time on the planet for us to ascend into that beautiful 5D realm of, I feel we're moving toward heaven on earth. And it's just the beauty of, in our higher frequency, of recognizing who we truly are again and being able to live that experience on the planet. So that's hopefully that makes a little bit of sense.
My own take on spirit is that we have two ways of seeing how we actually live in our lives. One of them is that we live in our heads and our 5 senses: what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we touch, and what we taste. These are our 5 senses. But there's also a 6th sense that is not meant to be spoken about and is considered to be out there. But what it really is our intuition. It's our knowing. It's what we feel in our chests, in our heart chakra, in our gut, in our stomach. It's what we know. It's a trusting. And so you can live in your head and stay there, or you can live in your knowing and realize that your gut is giving you signals such as feelings, whether it doesn't feel right or whether it does feel right. And that's called a knowing. And that's the big difference with us in this world, isn't it, Colleen? Where spiritually, you just know something and that becomes your guide. It's why you know that your free will is what propels you more than anything else to know that you have a choice, and that your head is telling you not to trust a system whereby the data and the information that is available is giving you a very different answer. So you can convince yourself in your head to trust other people who are supposedly higher up in authority and ought to know in their heads from the data being provided that we must follow along. But somewhere it's just not right. And for me, that's where spirituality becomes so important, to have a higher trust. And it is why we have a situation in the world today whereby it's splitting almost down the middle for those that are now openly saying that they believe in spirit and God, versus those that openly declare that they are atheists and that they get their knowledge and knowing from authority and science and doctors and the news and politicians. Now, when they start behaving in ways that don't add up, your knowing intuition, your crap detectors, your antenna tell you that something isn't right. Now, this has led us down a pathway into segregation that we just know is wrong. So that separation, that discrimination just does not add up. But Colleen, how are you coping with all of this? And how does the regular person even get close to working out the rights from the wrongs and making those changes?
Yeah, wow, it is a very, very difficult time. I'm very fortunate. I live in Queensland, so I'm not in Victoria. I'm not in, well, Sydney more so, New South Wales. We've been probably for a short time, that is. I think it's going to change. Well, I've been very fortunate that life hasn't really changed a great deal for me. But what I have found very, very difficult is certainly knowing what I know about these vaccines, knowing that it is pushed upon people, knowing that, that there are lots and lots of adverse effects, lots of deaths that the media is covering up and not revealing. And I feel that there's a lot of information out there if you go looking, and that people should be given that information. They should be shown the truth, the statistics around that, so that they can make an informed decision. I found that very, very difficult. And I've also found the divide happening very, very hard. And it's quite amazing. I've never read the Bible. I was raised in an environment that was very non-religious, and I've just had no want or need to go to church, for example. So I've never really gone down that path of looking into the Bible. But I am incredibly fascinated, more than any other time, knowing that what is happening here was prophesied in Revelations, and people have talked to me about it quite a lot. And even the fact that it'll be mother against child, husband against wife, that's what's happening right now, and it's breaking my heart. I've never seen such divide in our community or in our world ever. As you said, there's always been discrimination, and majority of people sort of step and go, hey, that's wrong. And we have laws to stop that. And yet here we are in this really difficult time where discrimination is outrageous because people are making a decision about their own body. And that's been heartbreaking, because I've seen people out a family member and people feeling very, very alone during this difficult time because they don't agree or they don't want the vaccine. And they're getting a lot of pressure from family. You can't see someone unless you have it, or you can't work. But the whole no job thing is outrageous to me. And it's just heartbreaking to see how many people it's hurting. The other thing that's breaking my heart is the lockdowns, people's mental health, people not able to access their usual health needs. So they're getting sicker and they're dying from that. And of course, suicide is through the roof. Just, thinking about the elderly stuck in home, like in their own home by themselves, not being able to see anyone, is the worst thing in the world. They need hugs. They need connection. They need people with them and around them. And like I had a very difficult experience recently. We cared for my auntie who was in palliative at home, and her sons could not come up from Sydney to say goodbye and could not come up for the funeral. That's just one little story amongst millions of really difficult stories. And that's what's breaking the human spirit. And I know that that's part of the agenda. Just keep breaking people, promise a little bit, give them a little bit of reprieve from lockdowns, and then lock them down again. And it just each and every time breaks that spirit inside. And it's just hard. People, men in particular, who are providers for their families and not able to get out there and do that, families struggling to put food on the table. It's just beyond, and I know that Australia will be the first to send troops over to a country that was, experiencing that from a government in a way of tyranny. And here we are experiencing it in our own country. It's mind-blowing. So I think that's the hardest thing, the divide and the experience of people in lockdown and the effects of that people are not being shown. That's what's broken.
Is it possible to show somebody or guide them where to start when they want to embark on their spiritual journey?
Absolutely. I don't know if it's something that you can show someone how to do, but hopefully there's a resonance in it. My whole take is that, as I said, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. We have come here on purpose. We have chosen to be here to learn, grow, and evolve, but we've come with a really important mission. And more than ever, people who are on the planet at this time have a very, very important role. And when you discover that and you feel it, there is nothing more powerful in lifting your vibration. So what I do for my work is take people into that space to connect and remember their purpose in being here. But it doesn't even have to take that, because people think that must be some big thing. It must be I'm supposed to do something like, a particular type of work or whatever. It's not necessarily that. It's just I've had people in the chair finding out their purpose was their every moment interaction with people, and that they can lift somebody's spirit by just stopping and complimenting them as they naturally do, and how they talk to them and the time they spend to connect. That is a purpose that is so, so important. So we've all got that reason for being here right now. We just may not have discovered it. So all I would suggest is to just, whilst we have this time, take that time to just sit and be. And a lot of people don't do that. They're always, if you can stop and just sit and just notice and feel what you're feeling, and just maybe try to listen to whatever you get, whether you feel you're making it up or not. The more you do it, the more you realize it's coming from another place. And just to feel into sensations, feel into the body. How's your body feeling during this? Because we don't usually take that time. In society, we're taught to be in our head. We're taught at school that you get praised by remembering stuff, and it's keeping you in your head. That's how we survive through our schooling years and, beyond into university and everything. We've got to learn by remembering. And of course, when we're here, we're not here in our body. So if we can just start to sit and just be with ourselves, and nature's a beautiful place to do that, because nature really connects us. So on those opportunities to go for a walk, I know that apparently you're not supposed to stop. It's insane. But even in your backyard, just being quiet more than anything, just being quiet and just listening. And when you're doing that more and more, you'll start getting information. So the thing that gets me through this, I've had a couple of experiences with a friend of mine who we were on the same page with regard to watching, especially what was happening in the States. And when that didn't go according to what we hoped in January, and Biden was president from then on, a lot of people lost faith there. And it was a very difficult time for people who'd been watching, knowing the outcome of that was going to have a huge impact on the world. And my friend just lost all faith then. He just went, oh, that's it. We've got no chance. We can't come back from this. Whereas I kept saying to him, we don't know that. I feel that anything can happen, and I feel there's something good still happening, and at any moment we could find out. And so I was very positive around that because I feel that. I just, there's nothing stopping me from, it's an inner knowing that this is all perfect and meant to be, and that we'll be okay. If we just hold and just get through this period, we'll come out the other side and go, wow. But he's really, really struggling with that. And I've talked to him about doing his best to just tap into that inner knowing he's had before and just feel that, because there's all that, everything else is a distraction, and what we believe inside of us we create. That's the reality. We're so powerful, our thoughts create. So putting out what we want, which is being free in a society where people are back connected and living, is something that you can do for yourself. Because I it might sound really weird, but I know that we have options of different timelines, and we can step off the crazy timeline that could unfold into what we choose to live life as. And by doing that, I mean, the powers to be, those dark forces, want us to feel down. They want us to feel low, and especially in fear. So I, for one, am choosing not to give them that. I'm choosing to hold myself, because love will conquer all. It's the most powerful vibration. And if I can just send love in that direction, then if we all do that, they couldn't survive. They're not being, because they feed off our low vibrational energy, which is our fear, our apathy, our anger, all the things that they're pushing us to feel. If we keep coming back to a place of balance and just coming back to that knowing inside, it's okay, I can feel something inside me that resonates that this is all perfect and meant to be, and will be okay. Stay in love, stay in connection with your family, your friends, and just know that everybody's on their own journey. And if somebody's not doing what you would like them to do, or making the decisions you hope they do for what you feel is the right thing, then still love them anyway, because they need to do what they need to do, like you need to do yours. And that's the most important part of this, not to judge another, not to attack, not to ridicule, just accept that everybody's on their own journey, doing the best they can. And if and when they're ready to see something, then they will. And it could take a big event for a hell of a lot of people to go, oh my goodness, what on earth is this about? I can see it now. But everybody just needs to be on their own journey and to live their life as best they can in these times. But you have a hell of a big role in supporting if you can just offer love.
Yeah, a couple of points I'd like to make, Colleen. Firstly is this: authority appears to actually enjoy the fear that they create. I mean, you've only got to look at the premiers in those press conferences, the way that they hit hard and they give you threats and warnings that if you do not comply, you will suffer. And worse, in New South Wales, we're now learning that they're completely backing down on those threats. So what were they getting out of it? And why were they pushing so hard if they knew, or ought to have known, that it was just never going to wash? Further, the cruelty shown against the protesters has been brutal, just to stop people breathing fresh air in a country whereby fewer than 100,000 people out of 26 million have even caught the virus in this massive land that we live outside anyway, and less than 1,250 people have died in almost 2 years of this going on, with a survival rate well over 98% across all age brackets and existing health conditions. Furthermore, when you drill down, children 0 to 19 years of age have a 100% efficacy, meaning they don't die from this virus regardless. As a matter of fact, there was one case that's been reported in the data, one case of a male aged 15 that died according to COVID, but who presented to hospital with meningitis. So you can't even say that that is a COVID death, even though they want to say that it is. But for all of us watching, it means that if you're a healthy 0 to 19-year-old, you have nothing to worry about. So you're watching all of this and you're realizing what the government is trying to do, and you are at a loss to find the purpose in what they're doing. Meanwhile, in our lives, we are looking to find purpose overall, and you realize that the government is on shaking sand. So, what I've learned in all of this is that the most important thing for me, and I learned this through the Trump era, was to become self sufficient. That was very important. And that meant not just being able to grow my own vegetables and fruit in my backyard, but that's a great start, but also how I'm going to rely on myself to derive an income should I not want to participate in an area where I need to work for somebody else. So for me, that's a case of doing a course and re-embarking on a brand new career. Equally, it's just as important to get out here and do these shows because this is what I enjoy doing. So for me, this is my 5D world and it's emerging before my very eyes. The final thing I wanted to bring up before I throw you a question to get on here to keep the show going, Colleen, is that for me, it was all about free will. I figured that they can take everything off me, my career, my livelihood, my income, my house, my car, everything. They can even take the clothes off my back. But I won't take that vaccine because I don't trust it. And with that and nothing else, and standing here naked in the world at 50 years of age with nothing else but my free will, I realized to me that that's the most important thing that I have. It's what I was given at birth. It's what my mother told me that I was always given, like all of us were. And regardless whether you believe, are religious or not, spiritual or not, or an atheist, all of us know or knew that we were given free will. And if we've now been convinced that free will is not as important as it was, and we have to do what another human being tells us to do just to keep us safe, well, that's a line in the sand that I'm not prepared to cross. And it is there that I find that we are going to be different. So, with that, can you elaborate more on what I've said, and how are you seeing our world emerging in these developments that I've brought up?
I think it can. I think that we've been led to believe that we're small, non-important people in a large world, and yet we are incredible beings. We've just never experienced truth. And I feel that all those things that you said, absolutely, being self-sufficient, I think there's a real want for people to start growing their food. I mean, our food is poisoned, our water is poisoned, our air is poisoned. So when all that's not happening, our bodies are an incredible healing device. We don't need doctors to put drugs into us which often make us sicker. We have everything within us and in nature to be healthy and to continue to grow. And, things like frequency, we're never taught at university. Funny that, because it's the most powerful thing. We are energetic beings. So frequency is so important. And when we're out of balance, we kind of need frequencies, to support us to come back in, or a change in lifestyle, or certain foods that give us those frequencies, or the sun, and we're kept inside during this crazy time. It's nuts. But certainly, the other thing I thought I'd like to mention is when you talk about your beautiful mother gave you that wisdom about being, able to make, you have your rights and you can make those choices for yourself because you have the right. Common law is what I feel is a very, very important thing for people to learn about. It was taken away. We're under corporate law, and we're not free under that. We're a dead entity under a corporation, whereas under common law, we're living men and women with rights that cannot be taken away from us by anybody. And, it's about being honourable and loving each other and not hurting or harming anybody. And our natural way of being can definitely do that. So common law is something that I am really fascinated to learn so much more about. And there's groups all around Australia that, meet around that. And same with Know Your Rights group, same thing. Those sorts of organisations are going through booming at the moment because people are realising that they don't want to comply to this tyranny. How do they not? And then they realise that it's not lawful. They realise that they don't have to follow that in an awful sense. So I would strongly suggest that. And I think that, as you said, being self-sufficient, knowing who you are, when you know who you are, you're not reliant on anything or anyone. You interact beautifully, but you're okay anyway. And no one can take that away from you. They're doing their best to snuff us out and to take that away, but you cannot take away that soul. And us as humans have that uniqueness. And yeah, I do feel it's that easy when we are freer than what we are at the moment. They're doing their best to break us, and I honestly don't feel that they will. I think that we'll get to that point, and it's through unity. And I think the one thing that will unite everybody is my passion, and that's saving children. You know, that's the hardest thing I found about waking up is what's happening to children in the background through systematic abuse, through children going missing. 20,000 children go missing in Australia per year. People have challenged that, but it exists. And go looking. You know, what is happening is heartbreaking. So I feel that when the truth of that comes out, people will come together like never before, because everybody is united through children. But I think that people are starting to unite in groups everywhere. You talked about 150,000 people. There's groups everywhere that are coming together because they do not want to continue going down this path of tyranny, and they're looking for ways to come together. Whether they're vaxxed or unvaxxed, they're still not okay with what's happening. It's just that obviously the vaxxed are being pushed out of society, so to speak, and their privileges and benefits are being taken away. But certainly your rights can never be taken away when you understand that. So can it be that easy? I think so, when we know who we truly are. And that's going to take some unlearning and some, realization. But the frequencies coming in are designed to do that for people, for the veil to thin. We come in and we forget who we are, because if we knew that, we wouldn't have the learning, growth and experiences that we do. But because we're pushed at this time on the planet to change our ways, really, we've been raping and pillaging the planet for however long. We've been treating each other terribly. We've been segregating into, we've lost our extended families, our tribes, all that kind of stuff. We've just lost our way. And I feel that losing connection with who we are is a big part of that. So as the veil lifts, because our frequencies are, raising, our vibrations are raising, then we'll be connecting to things we've never connected to before. And knowing who we are, we're not going to be as impacted. So yes, I do. It's not going to be immediate. We've got to go through a lot before that, but that's where we can start doing it now. Start really focusing on ourselves and our inner world instead of our outer world.
Thanks, Colleen. It's a subject that we can talk about for a long time. For those who've watched and enjoyed the show today, could you please tell us how they can get in touch with you?
Yes, there is. I haven't been teaching during this whole crazy COVID thing, but I will be next year, and probably more relaxed. Like, I've always taught a diploma of clinical hypnotherapy, which is practitioner of heart energetics, which is my unique modality. And I do a certificate, and I teach past life and the beyond space as well. But I don't feel aligned to work under rules of an association requirement and all that kind of stuff, under regulation. All I'm going to do from next year is teaching people what I do, because the world will need a lot of help, so I can do that more freely and easily. So at the moment, my courses are, they'll be on the website, but they're not happening until next year. But you can contact me through Heart Energetics, and that's TIX.com. That's my website. You can get a feel for the courses that I run, but I'm going to do it more relaxed, as I said, next year, just so that I can get as many people trained up to help as many people as possible. So that's how you'll find me.
Well, thanks, Colleen. It's been a great thrill to talk to you today and to explain different perspectives on what spirituality means and what it means in the world today, as we are embarking on what clearly is becoming a new world. There is no going back to the days of 2019. They are long gone.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Jason.